Hello and welcome to Birth as We Know It. I am your podcast host, Kiona Nessenbaum. I have experienced birth as a doula, a student midwife, and as a mother of 3 amazing children with my husband and high school sweetheart by my side. After attending over 130 births, including my own, I've realized that each birth experience is truly unique. So make sure you subscribe and join me every week as we are guided through many different birth experiences through the lens of the storyteller. Please be aware that some of the stories can be triggering to hear, so feel free to pause, take a breath, and come back and listen whenever you're ready. With that said, let's prep ourselves to dive deep and get detailed about what really happens in the birth space. Hello everyone and welcome back. I am excited to share my birth story with my 3rd child, Katana. She is such a little bundle of joy, and her birth story is the most recent, so I am actually recording this for the 3rd time now because previously I've recorded too many details and it just got super long, so I'm trying to get to the point. And I feel like the reason why it's hard to get to the point is because she's just under a year and a half old, and this birth was really intense for me, and the pregnancy was more intense for me, so it was just different. So let's go ahead and dive into the details of this pregnancy and birth experience, and we'll go from there. So I want to start off by saying this was a really challenging pregnancy, and I feel like this pregnancy was challenging for more things than just being pregnant, but having 2 older children, also being pregnant during the height of like the COVID pandemic and the Black Lives Matter movement, and there was just so much stress that led to this pregnancy becoming stressful. And it all started with even just trying to become pregnant. All of this stress made it hard for us to actually conceive. So when we decided to conceive, I took out my birth control, which was Nexplanon at the time. It was the arm implant. And with my son, when we were conceiving my son, it happened super quick, like just 1 cycle, and then we got pregnant. But with my daughter Katana, it actually took us a whole year. And I blame that on stress and just, adjusting to life during the pandemic and just, dealing with that. And so since it took us so long to conceive, I felt like there was something wrong with me and my husband. I was like, maybe it's one of us. Like, why is it taking so long? And I knew that it could take long, but our 2 previous conception stories were actually pretty quick. So I was starting to get concerned, but I wanted to start with the natural route of like trying to figure out what was going on. And so I just looked up some resources and I started reading a lot about vaginal steaming. So I actually did that. And so I did some vaginal steaming with a professional, and this professional got some specific herbs for fertility and cleansing of the uterus. And I would steam 3 times a month, but it would just be in the beginning. So it would be like right after my period, I would steam 3 days in a row for 10 minutes. And I was skeptical at first, and I was just like, I don't understand what's going on. Like, why is this happening? But I kept doing it, and I only actually had to do it for 3 months because my body was reacting really well to the vaginal herbs. So what you would do is you just get all of these herbs, you boil them in hot water, just like as if you're making a big pot of tea, and then you cover it and you take it to wherever you're going to steam. And I would sit on a wooden birth stool and cover my legs in blankets so that the steam couldn't escape around me. And I would put this hot pot full of fertility herbs under me, and I would let the steam just like, engulf like my vulva. I wasn't too close, I wasn't too far. And the idea is, for me, it made sense for me to be like, oh, it's like, steaming your face when you're sick and you need to like clear out your nasal passage. Like, that's what I thought, and that is what made sense for me with like needing to like cleanse my womb, to like start fresh and let my body know, hey, it's a safe place to house a baby. And so I did that. And then we finally ended up getting pregnant. So it took us 3 months with vaginal steaming. So I had already been struggling to get pregnant for about 9 months. And then I did vaginal steaming for 3 months. And then the first period after the 3-month third time, we got pregnant, and I was super excited. I was so excited. I was ready, and I was so stressed with even just telling my family. I was trying to figure out how to tell Kumar. I wanted it to be a big surprise, and so much that, like, you know, I was taking tests so much throughout this year of trying to conceive. So I got like that little Amazon bundle where you get like 25 or 50 pregnancy test strips, and you just dunk it in urine every so often. You're supposed to do it like the day before or the day after your missed period, but I was doing it all the time because my cycles were really wonky. Some of them were like 12 days, 14 days, and I wasn't sure when I was ovulating or anything like that. So it was just super inconvenient. So I was taking these tests, and then I had a faint line on the test, and I was like, oh my God, yay. And then that day, like, it was in the morning, and so I had ordered digital pregnancy test, you know, so that it could say the word pregnant or the word yes or no. And I ordered some clear blue off Amazon, and it was supposed to come that day, and it was supposed to come by like 5 or 6 p.m. So it came at 4, which I was super happy about because it was like right around the time my husband was going to come home for work. And then I was peeing all day on these sticks just to confirm that I had a faint line. And so I had no more pee left. And so I peed the tiniest amount into a cup, and I dunked it for 5 seconds because I knew I wouldn't have a stream that would last 5 seconds. So I dunked it for 5 seconds, and then it said error. And I had another one, and so I did it again, and then it said error. And I was like, what am I doing wrong? And I had been taking pregnancy tests all day long. So I decided to actually read the instructions. And if you're dunking it, you have to actually dunk it for 20 seconds. And so I just ruined $15 worth of pregnancy tests. And so I was stressed out. I ran out to the store, and I was so stressed out that my husband was like, what is wrong? And I was like, nothing, I gotta go to the store. And he's like, what are you doing? Like, where are you going? And I just left. And I went to the store, and I kept going. I had to go to like 3 different stores to actually get digital pregnancy tests, which was so annoying. But I ended up finding one, finally dipped it, read the instructions before I dipped it when I came home. Because when I came home, I just jetted upstairs to my bedroom bathroom. And I was like, I need to just do this because I'm tired of holding this secret. My family's already been home for a few hours, and I just wanted to just get it done. So I did it properly, and it said yes. And then I brought my husband upstairs and told him. It was really exciting. He went and got the kids. And the first thing Kavina said, she was like, like she could feel that something was off. And she was like, Mom, are you pregnant? And I was like, just go get your brother. And she was like, oh, you're pregnant, you know? And so I was excited that she connected the dots. And so that was really exciting. Yeah. So after I got pregnant, I actually ended up texting my midwife friend who I knew I wanted to take care of me during my pregnancy. And we were business partners as doulas prior. And so I texted her and said, hey, I just sent you an email. And she's like, oh, okay, I'll check it out. And she looked, and I actually sent her an email through her business website inquiry form saying, catch my baby. And then she called me. Her name is Mercedes Snyder. She called me, and she was like screaming. She's like, oh my God, Kiki, I'm so excited. You know, and that just made me even more excited because I knew that we were on the same page and just like excited about like what was to come for my family and for me to be supported by someone who has so much love for me already. And so I was really excited about that. And she was like, you got me screaming in here at the store with my family. Everybody's looking at me all crazy. And I just love that. That's the kind of response that I want from someone who is going to care for me throughout my pregnancy. I was so excited. And so I really enjoyed my care. I had Mercedes Snyder, and then I also hired the same doula that I had with my son Cairo. Her name is Kristen Travis. I will put their links for their businesses down in the description or the show notes, and they are amazing. They're so great. I love them, and I was really happy because I was able to have my birth team be a birth team of color again, and I just felt so loved and cared for, and just, I felt really amazing about it. I can't talk enough about how well my care went. So that was really fun. And so let's move forward to my pregnancy. The symptoms that I had with Katana were very much fatigue and nausea, and I had a lot of pubic symphysis pain throughout my pregnancy. I feel again that it just had to do with more stress and like lack of sleep for having two older kids, and still needing and wanting to spend time with them and, be present with them before we had another human in our family. And so that was really great. I did take on some doula clients when I was pregnant, and I participated as a birth assistant in some births throughout this pregnancy as well. But this pregnancy itself was one of the most challenging, also because for my career, as in like my work, like I couldn't be in the birth space as much as I wanted. So I decided to apply to positions and apply my skills to positions in like the admin form that were still in the birth world. So I ended up working for an organization that I will not name because I actually ended up resigning from them because there were lots of microaggressions involved and racism. So I resigned from there, and I was about 8 weeks pregnant when I resigned. And so with still being pregnant, actually I wasn't 8 weeks pregnant. I was probably about 12 to 15 weeks. I don't remember exactly, but I was like well into my pregnancy. And so I had to find another job while pregnant. And so I ended up applying and accepting a position that was offered to me as an admin at a lactation office, which was great. Her name is Dr. Marianne O'Hara, and she is amazing. She focuses on tongue tie revisions and lactation support. I will also put her information in the description below. She's amazing. I really loved her. The only reason why I also ended up switching from her office, I only worked with her for about 1 month. I moved working from her office because it was just too far away, and I live further south in like the Auburn area, and her office is up north like in Lake City area, like Mount Lake Terrace area, kind of shoreliney, and so I would be driving a long time, and I just didn't like that, and it was really challenging for me. So I ended up leaving her office and moving and working back at the Puget Sound Birth Center as a front desk receptionist. And that was a lot of fun. I loved working with and seeing repeat clients, or I wasn't a doula at the time, but I would see clients that I was a doula for. And then I would see familiar faces from me being a student midwife or working as a birth assistant, or even just working as an admin previously, because I worked as an admin like about 4 years prior. And so it was fun to see people that I recognized. And then I ended up going on leave, my maternity leave, after I had Katana. So my pregnancy, this was the most challenging pregnancy for me. And I don't know how else to say it. It was just the most challenging. My body was, a little bit older, dealing with more, and all of the stress, and then working and driving, and everything just seemed to just pile up, which was hard for me. And it was also hard on my family because I really needed to take naps more, and the concern of like the COVID vaccines and everything like that. So that was just a lot of information and stress. So this pregnancy was so challenging. I don't know. I feel like I couldn't really embrace the pregnancy as much as I did to the prior pregnancies because of everything that was surrounding us in the environment or outside in the world, So moving on to when I was really nervous about actually giving birth, because one of the symptoms that I also really experienced during this pregnancy was something called lightning crotch. I don't know if anybody has heard of it. If you haven't, it's basically where your baby is putting so much weight down on your vulva and cervical nerves. And like when you move a certain way or do something, stand up too fast, it feels like shots of electricity or lightning are just like going through your vagina. And that was how I experienced it. And it was not fun. I was so done with being pregnant at like 37 weeks. It was happening so often for me that I actually had one of the midwives that I worked with. Her name is Tracy Cooper, who is also amazing. I love her so much. I asked if she could check me. They were like, yeah, you're closed. You're kind of soft. And like your cervix is closed. It is soft, you know, starting to prepare, but you're nowhere close to labor, and that's okay. You know, they didn't say it like that, but that was like the gist of it. And I was like, okay, that's fine. And I was like, I am term. I want to get this baby out, you know? So from about 37 weeks to the time that I had her, which happened to be on her due date, I was just devastated. I was so uncomfortable. I couldn't sleep. She moved so much. Katana moved so much. I felt like I had no space at all. And the ironic thing is my belly was the smallest with her out of the three. And so she moved so much, like she would stretch her full body out. And I feel maybe it was so uncomfortable because she was more tucked into my torso rather than like belly coming out of my torso. That could be why it hurt so much. But it was very challenging to sleep and I couldn't get comfortable. So I was always exhausted and tired and everything was just adding up. And so I commonly say that I probably cried myself to sleep every night for the last 3 weeks of pregnancy. I wasn't like bawling every time, but I would have like silent tears rolling down my face because I just wanted to be done. And I wanted to meet her as well, you know, because I knew that she was going to be so rambunctious and like just claim her space and just fit right in. And so I ended up asking Mercedes if she could come over. I think it was 3 days before my due date, 2 or 3 days before my due date. And I asked her if she could sweep my membranes because nothing was happening. Sweeping my membranes or doing a cervical sweep is when the midwife puts their fingers like into your cervix and kind of just like stretches your cervix out and tries to separate the amniotic bag or sac from your cervical wall, always with the risk of potentially doing an artificial rupture of membranes on accident, but usually it's focused on the cervical muscles to stretch and soften and encourage contractions to come to induce or augment labor in a more natural way without medications. And so she came and did that, and it was painful. I had never done it before. It was painful for me, but I'm so happy that I had someone that I trusted because she was talking to me. She told me, just tell me when to stop. And we just had this relationship, or have this relationship, where we can communicate clearly with each other. And I was like hanging onto her arm and I wasn't squeezing super hard, but I was breathing and she was communicating with me the whole time. So I felt safe. And she did it, and there was a lot of bloody show when she brought her hand out, and my daughter Kavina was actually there. I asked her, I was like, do you want to be here for the cervical sweep, or do you want to, you know, go in your room? Because my midwife came to my house to do it, and so we were just on my bed, and Kavina was like, no, I want to stay. And my son Cairo was like, no, I'll go, it's fine. So Cairo went and played and Kavina stayed, and she was like kind of shocked and a little shooken that of how far the midwife's hand had to go inside me to do this. But she was like, Mommy, you looked like you were in a lot of pain. And I was like, well, I was, but I'm okay. I'm safe. And, you know, I checked in with her as, you know, I was breathing through this as well, through the cervical stretch. And when I was done, she was shocked to see the amount of blood too. And she was like, Mommy, are you okay? And I was like, I'm fine, baby. This is good. That's a good sign. It means my cervix is like ripening and, you know, like it's changing with the sweep. So that's really good. And she was like, okay. And so contractions did start to come and everything was good. And they weren't like taking my attention completely away. But I was definitely extra crampy and I was spotting more. So That day, my midwife went and did her own thing. She either went home or went to go see clients. And then I was like, yeah, things are happening. So I went and go to take a shower. I put my kids to bed. My husband went to bed, and I laid down and was coping through the contractions that I was having. And then I fell asleep and woke up in the morning, and I was just so sad that nothing actually happened. I did not go into labor that night, and I was pretty devastated because I was so ready to be done. So I texted my midwife as soon as I woke up, and I was like, Mercedes, when can you come back? I'm ready to do this again. I think it was back-to-back days. So she came 3 days before my due date, and then she came 2 days before my due date, and I said, Mercedes, I know that she is so good at cervical sweeps, and I know that she has super strong hands. I looked her in her eyes, and I was like, do your due diligence, like, mess it up, like, F it up in there, like, I'm ready, like, I'm so over this. And she just laughed at me, her little giggle, and she's like, okay, Kiki, I got you. And so I, like, prepped myself, and we walked through it slowly, and, she was like, are you ready? And I was like, yeah. And then so we did it. I was breathing. I squeezed her arm a little bit firmer this time, but it was good. And after she did that, that was around, I think she did the sweep around like 8 or 9 p.m. She came over and she brought her dinner with her so that she can hang out for a little bit to see. And so I put my kids to bed, and my husband was in bed. And we did the sweep, and then I was talking, and then they were really starting to take my attention. And she was like, I was like, I think I might start timing these. And she was like, okay. And she was like, make sure you don't time them too soon. Only time them when they're taking your attention, because, you don't want to get too excited. You just want your body to do its thing. And I was like, yep, no worries. They are kind of taking my attention, and I'm having to like stop and breathe through some of them. And so I continued to time them and bounce on a ball while chatting with her and leaning forward over our chairs in the kitchen. That was good. And then she ate her dinner. We chatted a little bit, and it was late at this time. It was probably about like 10:30, 11 p.m. And I was like, I can set up the couch for you if you want. And she's like, no, I'll just go out to my car, and I'll go ahead and take a small nap in my car, do a few things, and then I'll come back in about an hour to check on you. And I was like, okay, that works. And so she went out into her car, and I went upstairs. I did not want to lay down. I wanted things to progress. So I ended up sitting backwards on my toilet. And I also did that the day before, but nothing happened, obviously. But this time I sat on my toilet, peed a little and let my body release all its whatever it wanted. And I was really timing them, and they were getting more intense to the point to where I actually felt like I needed to make noise through them to focus through the surge and contraction. And so I ended up messaging Mercedes, because last time I was in denial that I was in labor with my son. And so this time I wanted to make sure that, like, since we were going to a birth center, I didn't want to like rile everybody up in the middle of the night if nothing was going to happen. And so I was really trying my best to say, like, I am having contractions. They are getting more intense, but like, is this it? Like, is this labor? Because I don't want to wake everybody up. I don't want to send everyone to the birth center. I don't want to do that. Because when she did the cervical sweep, I had dilated 1 centimeter from the day before. So the surges from the day before were doing something. And so when she first did my cervical sweep, I was actually sitting at a 4 centimeters, for a while, I guess. And then after she was done with the first cervical sweep, I was about 4.5, and then, or 4, stretchy 4.5. And then the next day she came back and she was like, oh, you're like a 5.5. That's really awesome. And I was like, great, this is perfect. Let's keep going. So as I'm on the toilet backwards, bouncing back to my contractions, I'm texting her, and I was like, can we, like, I was like basically telling her how I was feeling. I was like, I am really needing to focus on these contractions. I'm nervous because I don't want to wake everybody up, but I don't want to be in denial. And she's like, do you want to come chat? And I was like, sure. And so she came up and met me in my bathroom, and we chatted for a little bit, and she watched me go through a couple of my surges and contractions, and she was like, yeah, Kiki, I think that this is something. I think something's going on. So like, let's plan to go and meet at the birth center in about half an hour. It was 11:30 at this time. And we'll get things going and just go from there. And I was like, okay. And so I was happy about that. And so I woke up my husband. I kissed my kids. They stayed at home with no, actually they didn't stay at home. They came and we packed them up. Got everybody, like I woke up my husband and told him, he got the kids ready as I got myself ready. All of our bags were packed already and in the car because I was ready to have this baby. I was over being pregnant. And so I knew that throughout my pregnancy, one thing for me aesthetically is with the birth of my son, I had really short hair because during my pregnancy, I had actually shaved my head. And I just wanted to be different, probably some emotional things involved with that decision, but I shaved my head and my dad's bald. So I called him and I was like, hey, Dad, I'm your twin now. And he was like, ah. Anyways, that's the previous pregnancy. But in the birth of my son, I had really short hair. And by the time I was pregnant and ready to birth Katana, my hair was long. So I knew that I aesthetically wanted to have French braids. So I spent time on braiding my hair before we left. And it was taking some time because I was doing it between contractions. And so Mercedes actually ended up calling me and was like, hey, Kiki, where you at? It's been a little while. It's been about 20 minutes. And I'm like, oh, I haven't left yet, but we're leaving right now. And she's like, all right, don't wait too long. Come on. Because it was my third baby, could have been faster. And so we all got in the car and my contractions and surges were getting stronger and they were closer together. I wasn't timing them at this point. I didn't care anymore because things were going along. And we called my parents and they met us. My mom was unable to come to this one because my grandmother was sick. She was in remission from cancer, so she stayed with my grandma in Wenatchee. And my dad and stepmom and little sister came and met us at the birth center. So did my little brother. And then we also called my sister Monet again. And this is the first labor that my oldest sister, Ashane, was actually able to attend. So I was super excited because she, she had a niece and a nephew prior, but this time she actually got to attend the birth, which was really exciting. And this was during COVID time, and we ended up birthing at the birth center that I worked at, so the Puget Sound Midwives and Birth Center in Renton. And because it was at night, they said that they would make an exception since nobody else would be in the building, that I could invite as many people as I wanted. But if it got into, the working hours, my family would have to leave or they would have to just stay inside my birth room. And I have a lot of family. So I was like, all right, let's do this. It's perfect timing. We have until the clinic opens to actually have this baby. And so everybody showed up, things started progressing. I also called one of my close friends, Delilah, who was also pregnant at the time. She was about 36 weeks pregnant when she came and supported me as a bonus doula / friend, which was a lot of fun. I was super thankful and appreciative of that. And it just felt awesome to have another pregnant person in the room. I don't know why that is, but it just felt really great. And so labor was progressing and everything was fine. And then they started getting really intense. I was leaning on my husband and I started crying with some of my contractions because they were so painful. And everybody that was in the room was really quiet and just observing, and they were being super supportive. Oh yeah, my doula did meet us at the birth center. We messaged her as well and told her what was going on. She met us there. I also had a birth photographer this time. Her name is Gabby, and she was phenomenal. I really appreciate her personality, and her work is really beautiful. I will also put some of my birth photos up on my show notes on my website so that everybody could see. I'll do the same for Cairo as well. But yeah, so things were getting really intense. My midwife was prepping the tub and I was ready. So This time I wanted to make sure that I had at least a bathing suit top on, because my previous photos, my boobs were everywhere, and I just like, even though it was such a beautiful and natural moment, I felt like those weren't photos that I could really share with everyone, and I wanted to be able to share a lot of my photos with everyone, and so this time I wore a bathing suit top and I got in the tub. And I remember before I got in the tub, it was such a sweet moment that I will forever hold close to my heart. My dad was there and he was hanging out, and I was about to get in the tub, and he was like, all right, baby, let me give you a hug before you get all butt naked and get in this tub. And I was like, okay, Dad. And so he hugged me, and it was just a sweet moment, like a sweet hug moment. And I just hugged him really tight, dropped a couple of tears, and then he like stepped out to give me some privacy to change. And so I got into the tub. It felt really great. And then my labor slowed down. It actually pretty much stopped after being in the tub for like 45 minutes to an hour. And I was devastated. I was like, what the heck is going on? I was like, I don't like this. Why is this happening? I'm so ready to just have her. I want it to continue to progress and just go. I want to meet her. I want to not be pregnant anymore. And I remember looking at Mercedes, and I loved this about my pregnancy because I am a birth professional and I was with somebody that I trusted, that I partnered with, that's like a sister to me. I was able to talk to her about all the things, and I was able to bring up suggestions about what I wanted for my labor and birth. And I asked her, I was like, what do you think about AROM right now, which is artificial rupture of membranes? I was like, as a provider, what do you think about this? And she was like, I think that it's a possibility, but I would want to do a cervical check and see where you're at and all of that stuff. And she was like, do you want me to go over the risks and benefits? And I was like, yes, please. Even as a professional, like a birth professional that knows the risks and benefits, it's good to hear it again and get that freshly in your mind as you're in labor doing what you're doing. And so she told me the risks and benefits, and we both agreed that, I would just get out of the tub and try to get contractions moving again and walking around and doing side lying and all this stuff. And so I did a lot of that, and nothing was happening really. I would have a contraction here and there. That's when people started going to fall asleep and take a nap because it was super late, or early, I should say, in the morning. And then my close friend Delilah and I were just walking up and down the hallway, and I remember her rubbing my back during one of my contractions, which was so nice. It was really nice to have her by my side at that moment. And we were walking back and forth, our bellies, our pregnancy waddles side by side, and chatting. And then after about an hour of trying to get things going, Mercedes popped in, and we were thinking, we were in sync because I was going to go find her, and then she just popped in and was like, hey, what do you think about an exam, a vaginal exam, cervical exam? And I was like, yeah, let's do that. Let's figure it out. And so I laid down on the bed. She did a vaginal exam, and she was like, Kiki, you're a 6. You're 6 centimeters. And at this point, I had been laboring for 6 hours already. And I was like, oh, you gotta be fucking kidding me. I was so mad. And I was like, okay, let's do AROM. Let's do that. Let's do artificial rupture of membranes. And she's like, yeah, because, you're super stretchy. Your cervix just wants to disappear, but baby isn't putting enough engagement with her head on your cervix. So it's not really going away. And so I was like, yep, let's do this AROM. I'm ready. Let's get things moving. I know what the risks and benefits are. Let's do this. And so my husband and sisters were sleeping in the other room. And then, I had some people, I don't remember exactly who was in the room with me at the time, but I was like, yep, let's do this. So we set up the birth stool and decide to do an AROM on the birth stool, just to encourage baby to descend a little bit more into the vaginal canal. And she broke my vital waters, and there was a lot of water, and I had my doula sitting behind me, and I was squeezing, leaning against her. I was sitting between her legs, basically. She was sitting on the bed. I was on the birth stool, which was next to the bed, and I was leaning back into her. Mercedes broke my bag of waters. Tons of water came out, and I went from a 6 to a 9.5, which is basically almost complete, but I just had a cervical lip. And so as soon as I had one first contraction after that, I had that contraction and I was like, somebody get my husband. I was like, somebody get my husband, because I knew it was happening. Like, things were turning, and I went from like really stalled labor to transition, and I got into the birth tub after that, and things were super intense, and contraction after contraction. I just wanted to encourage to descend this baby, and I was like pushing with my body, and this was the hardest pushing experience for me. It was so insane. Like, I was literally pushing with all my might, and I just remember like trying so hard with every contraction to get her the F out. I wanted her out. And my daughter Kavina, we had spoken during my pregnancy, and she said that she wanted to catch Katana, which was so happy and exciting for me. And so we got her into the birth tub with me in her bathing suit, and I was pushing, and I was just like having my eyes closed and going through all the surges, and I was holding whatever hand was closest to me. And then I ended up pushing more, and then I had Mercedes check me again, or she had suggested, I can't remember which one it is, and she just wanted to make sure that the cervix was completely gone, and she checked, and I was still 9.5 with pushing, and so she was like, all right, I'm going to try to reduce this or help push this cervical lip behind baby's head as you're pushing. So I need you to listen to my guidance. And I did. And so like I had to push down really, really hard while she was like pushing the cervical lip away. And honestly, that part didn't seem super painful to me. It was rough, but I was so focused on getting her out that I didn't focus on the pain for that moment. It was hard though. That was like probably one of the hardest moments in that labor of that, like that, just reducing the cervical lip. And so as I did that, Katana's head ended up coming out, like slowly, like, starting to become visible. And then I remember pushing and pushing and pushing so hard because I could feel her coming out, and I pushed, and I was like, oh yeah, okay, she's coming, and then I thought that I had like pushed her body out, and then Mercedes was like, her head is out. And I was like, oh my God, she has a fucking big head. Her head is huge. I was so over that. And then so she was like, all right, Kiki, come on, let's get the shoulders out. Like, let's do this. And so Kavina's down there, watching all of it happen. And she's the first one to touch Katana without gloved hands. And I love that so much. And she has her own perspective on how that experience was. And we'll actually hear it on the podcast. But she, was like, I was pushing, and I remember like really just trying to push her whole body out, but I couldn't push it all out. And Mercedes was like, come on, push, push, push. And so I think that she might have had to pull like her legs out a little bit, because I was really trying to just get her out. And so I pushed, and then, she finally came out. Kavina helped bring her up to my belly, and with Mercedes' help, I believe that I pushed for only about 45 minutes total. And then baby Katana was born on her due date. I was so happy to be done. I was so over being pregnant, and I was just ready. And then since I had the experience postpartum that I did with my son, we took active management steps, and I had shots of Pitocin, and, I had, did everything that I needed to do to prevent what happened last time. And so if you want the details on that, go ahead and listen to my previous episode, because it was a doozy. But so she was born, everything was fine. I didn't tear, I didn't need any sutures, and it was just, I was so happy. It's like as soon as she was out of my body and as soon as my placenta was born, I remember getting out of the birth tub at this point because I wanted to birth my placenta on the bed. I wanted the midwife to be able to have a better measurement of how much blood was lost. And it was just easier to like be out of the tub at that point because the tub was birthy, And so Kavina got out. I remember checking on her too, like, baby, are you okay? Like, are you sure you want to still catch Katana? And she's like, yeah, mom. But she looked terrified. She looked really scared when she was in there, when I first got back in there to push. But Mercedes was like, we got her, mama. Don't worry. We'll make sure that she's okay. And I was like, all right. And so I just like let loose and focused on pushing. But after she was born, and the placenta was born, I just felt amazing. I felt good, but I was also like, there's no way I'm doing this again. Like, I'm not doing this again. I was so over being pregnant. I didn't want to do it again. Fast forward to now, my daughter is currently 16 months and we're doing great. We did breastfeeding and our breastfeeding experience was good. It was more challenging than the previous two, which honestly was not surprising to me since the pregnancy was so challenging, but we ended up needing to actually go see Dr. Marianne O'Hara for a tongue tie revision because she had a really prominent tongue tie. She also has a really prominent lip tie that we did not end up correcting, but she, when she first got her teeth in, she had a little gap, but it's starting to close up a little bit now. So it's like self-correcting, but, yeah, so the breastfeeding experience was good. I was ready to just like breastfeed. We are actually still breastfeeding at this time. But when my milk finally came in, I ended up in and around my room for 2 whole weeks. And so I was fortunate enough for my husband to be off work for 2 months. And so I had his support. And then my mother-in-law lives with us. And so I had a lot of support from her. I had a lot of family come and visit and bring goodies and food, and I begged my stepmom to recreate that or continue to create and provide that special drink that encourages milk supply to come in. It's a Guatemalan remedy for milk supply, and I loved it with my previous 2 babies, and I begged her to make it this time, and she did, and it was amazing just as much. And then my mother-in-law made me a lot of like chicken soups and like chicken meals but she would make all of my meals with Nepali ghee, which was really delicious. I loved it. Like, my body was craving ghee and this drink all the time, and so it was amazing. I had such great postpartum support with my husband by my side and like my older children being able to help and love on their little sibling, and it was great. It was great. My postpartum was amazing. I didn't experience too much postpartum depression. I think I might have had a little bit of postpartum blues, but not anything close to what I had with Cairo. It was awesome. I was healing well, and now here we are. So yeah, that is my stories. All 3 of my birth stories, if you've listened to my 2 previous episodes, they're all so very different, and it's amazing. And I love how different they are because each child is so completely different, and they actually pretty much match up to their stories and pregnancies, because Katana is the most rambunctious and self-independent, crazy, perfect human definition of what a Sour Patch Kid is. And I love her so much, and I'm so excited to see her personality grow and develop. She's starting to talk and say things now. She's walking/running around now, and it's only going to get better from here as I watch all 3 of my beautiful babies just grow into their independent selves. But yes, that is it. So in my next episode, you will actually hear the perspective from Kavina herself on what it was like to be present at both Cairo and Katana's births. So if you want to listen to that, go ahead and subscribe and tune in next week, and we will dive into what birth was like for a 4-year-old / her again as an 8-year-old. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode today. Don't hesitate to share this with your family and friends. If you like this episode, feel free to leave a review so that the podcast can pop up for others, and that way they can see it and listen to it as well. If you have a story or experience you want to share on the Birth As We Know It podcast, head over to KionaNessenbaum.com and fill out the guest request form. That is KionaNessenbaum.com. I look forward to connecting with you again soon. Bye for now.